In the precinct basement, a buzzing lamp hung over the table where new case materials were spread. The atmosphere grew heavier. Everyone understood the city was panicking, the press was screaming, and there were no results. James broke the silence first. There's one lead. I tracked activity online, a user running an entire blog dedicated to Roy S. cases. Archives, photos, newspaper clippings, even his own reconstructions of crimes. He clicked on the laptop and the screen showed photographs of a room. The walls were covered in articles. On the shelves, albums with case files. In the center, a desk lamp by which someone had laid out copies of police materials. His name is Lester Miller, James continued. The Lives alone works as a courier. Loves serial killer cases. And apparently his favorite is Henley. See? Copycat, Mark exclaimed. I told you. Look at this circus. He is obsessed. Who else could know about the symbols? Kane studied the photo longer. His eyes swept over the wall of clippings. There were pictures of victims, diagrams of symbols, even old newspaper quotes from Kane himself, ripped from context. He is definitely deranged, the detective admitted. But derangement doesn't equal guilt. They visited Miller's apartment. Lester met them pale, frightened, but hardly like a predator. His hands trembled, he stuttered. He answered questions quickly, sometimes too honestly. I just collect. It is history. Don't you understand? Roy Henley is a legend in criminal forensics. You yourself, detective, made him famous. I haven't killed anyone. Mark snapped. Lies. You live surrounded by these articles. You know every detail. But he has no access to the victims, James said coldly. His life pizza delivery and old clippings. He is a dangerous fan, not a killer. Kane looked at Lester silently. And though the guy seemed disgusting in his obsession, there was none of the emptiness Kane had seen in the student after the murder. No foreign hands pulling the strings. They left the apartment, leaving Fan among his newspaper idols. In the car, Mark exploded. We let him go. What if he is the one we were looking for? No, Kane replied, his voice firm as stone. That would be too easy. Emma, who had been silent all along, added evenly, and too perfect. No copycat would do everything so flawlessly. Kane lit a cigarette. Smoke slowly rose, melding into the headlight beams. He knew the real enemy was nearby, and he wouldn't stop until Kane became the main player in the sit performance. For the third night in a row, the city was drenched in rain. But this time, the news didn't come from a random street or an office. This time, the victim was a former police officer. His name was Richard Holden. He had testified in court against Roy Henley 10 years ago, and his testimony had been decisive when Roy was sentenced to life imprisonment. Now Holden lay dead in his own apartment, his body mutilated with the familiar symbols. On the wall, a message written in blood. You made your choice. Now it's my move. When Kane saw it, something inside him broke. This isn't imitation, he whispered. It is him. Only he could know that Holden was the key in court. Emma nodded, staring at the cuts. There are details here that never appeared in public records. This is information only in the police as internal files. So either Roy has access to the archives, James muttered, or someone inside is helping him. Mark nervously paced the room. Then we re-all suspects. You were saying the killer is one of us. I am saying, Kane interjected, the handwriting is genuine. This isn't copying. It is him. Holden's murder is personal. And Roy always made his games personal. He approached the wall with the message. He traced the symbols with his finger as if trying to feel their origin. In his mind, a voice he remembered from 10 years ago echoed. It is chess, detective. And you were only one of the players. Later, at the precinct, the atmosphere was heavy. Journalists pressed again. On TV screens, headlines flickered. Killer targets police officers. Who is next? Mark was the first to explode. It has an inside leak. It has to be. Someone on our side is working for him. Don't he jump to conclusions, James cut in. If we assume Henley really has a way to control people, as we saw with that student, he could use any officer, leaving no traces. Emma calmly added, so he can make anyone betray, even those who want to remember it themselves. Kane sat aside in the shadows of his office. He knew this was no longer a series of random killings. This was a plan, and he was part of it. His own words returned like an echo. Impossible to ascertain mean and true. The evening was unusually quiet. The rain had suddenly stopped, and the city seemed to hold its breath. Kane walked down a narrow street toward his apartment. Keys rattled in his pocket as cigarettes molded between his teeth. He felt something unseen growing behind him, a shadow following each step. Instinct didn't fail him. From the darkness, a figure leapt out. A man of average age, appearing as an ordinary office worker, but a knife glinted in his hand. He lunged at Kane silently, without a word, with cold, mechanical precision. Kane dodged just in time. The knife sliced the air. In the next moment, they grappled. The man fought like a machine, no emotion, no hesitation. His eyes empty, without spark. Who sent you? Kane barked, twisting his arm. Silence. Only another sharp stab. The fight lasted several minutes until Kane disarmed him and restrained the attacker. Police arrived on the signal. The man was cuffed and placed in a car. He didn't resist, he just stared at one point, like a marionette whose strings had been cut. At the precinct, he was interrogated for hours. In vain. I don't remember anything, he repeated in a trembling voice. I was walking from work, then emptiness. I'm now here with you. Emma whispered. It is already a system. First the student, now him. They are being forced to do things that make no sense. These aren't drugs, James added. Tests are clean. No medical explanation. Mock stared at the attacker through the glass of the interrogation room. But he tried to kill you, detective. That's no coincidence. Kane remained silent. A grim realization grew inside him. Roy was no longer playing hidden games. He had made his move openly. And his target was singular Kane himself. That night Kane couldn't sleep. He saw the attacker's eyes empty, like dead glass. Only those who had their will taken looked like that. He knew Roy was learning. And every next move would come closer. The night at the precinct was tense. On the table scattered photos, city maps, surveillance records. No one was going home. Everyone understood a few more days and the killer would strike again. James sat over the monitors, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He connected to the city antenna systems tracking any unusual signals. Kane and Mock stood nearby, scrutinizing the lines of data flickering on the screen. Here, James suddenly murmured. Do you see it? On the city map, dots lit up. Small pulses, repeating at regular intervals. Radio waves. Mock asked. Not exactly. Looks like a low-frequency neurostream. As if someone is emitting signals that could be picked up by a simple receiver. And where's the source? Kane interjected. James zoomed in on the map. All the pulses converged at a single point. The hospital. The same ward where Roy Henley lies. Silence fell in the room. Even Mark didn't dare joke. Meanwhile, Emma worked on the victim's files. She laid out the photographs in a row and examined each dossier carefully. Look, as she called the others over. The victims are different, the student, the office worker, the former cop. But there is a connection. She pointed at the map. Each of them, in the last few days, was within the range of these signals. Here the student returning from university. Here the man leaving work. And Holden, he was at the hospital for a checkup. Mark shrugged. So what does that prove? Emma gave him a stern look. That their will was broken. Someone used these waves to control their actions. James added, "And that someone is in the ward, under full supervision, completely paralyzed." Kane closed his eyes for a moment. He felt the past tighten around his throat again. Roy. All was Roy. "So," he said slowly, "our monster isn't he sleeping?" He has learned to control other people's hands. They were silent. Only the computer hummed. Everyone understood. Next, they would face the one they had long considered powerless. Kane stepped onto the balcony and lit a cigarette. Rain began to fall again, as if the city itself wanted to hide their conversation. Rory is playing the game. But if he is a player, then so am I. And the match has only just begun. The hospital slept. Long corridors with pale lights flickered like in an old, horrifying dream. Kane led the way, flashlight in hand, pistol in pocket. Behind him, James, Emma, and Mark. Their steps echoed against the walls like clockwork. "Here it is, the 4th floor," whispered James, peering at his tablet. "The signal S source is right here. The door to room 407 was locked." Kane felt his chest tighten. 10 years and now they were here again. He pushed the door open. The room was nearly empty. Only a bed, a table, and on it a black device with wires resembling a gaming console. Cables led to electrodes attached to Roy Henley's head. Roy lay as always, motionless, paralyzed. But his eyes, they burned. They laughed even though his lips remained stone. On the device a screen flickered live video of City Street. A young man with a knife was walking toward a night store. Every movement synced with pulses on the monitor. "Oh my God," whispered Emma. "He is controlling him." Mark stared at the screen. "This is impossible." "Impossible, doesn't he mean and true?" Kane replied, his voice low and heavy. He stepped closer to Roy. The killer's eyes shone with triumph. It seemed he was shouting without words, "I'm still here. I'm still playing." James lunged at the device, trying to shut it off. But the screen blazed even brighter. A message appeared. "You won't take the game from me." At that moment, the man with the knife on video began to run, choosing a random victim on the street. Emma's chest tightened. They were watching a live crime controlled by the one lying motionless before them. Kane grabbed the cables and yanked sharply, but the device hissed. Roy trembled, his eyes shone even brighter. He was in ecstasy, finally showing them his power. "Look at me, Kane," the detective whispered to himself, leaning over him. "You're no longer a man. You're a shadow pulling the strings. But the game ends here." Roy responded only with the gaze of a predator who knows that even in chains, he will always remain a hunter. The room buzzed with electronics. The device blinked red like the heart of a monster, beating in rhythm with Roy's life. On the screen, chaotic movements of the man with a knife, now approaching a random girl on the street. "Stop him," shouted Mark. James yanked a cable and grabbed tools from the medical cart. Kane stepped forward and smashed the control panel with the butt of his pistol. Sparks flew, the screen crackled, then went dark. At that moment, the man on the video froze, as if he had lost his thread, and simply fell to the ground. People around screamed in panic, but the victim escaped unharmed. Roy shuddered. His paralyzed face remained stone cold, but his eyes, they were laughing. Triumph burned within them. Kane grabbed him by the collar and leaned in close. "This is the end, Hanley." The eyes replied, "No. This is only the beginning." They glimmered like a predator-esque, a creature that feels victorious even in a cage. "You've lost," Kane hissed through clenched teeth. Then something strange happened. A faint movement appeared at the corner of Roy's lips, a shadow of a smile. He couldn't speak, but his eyes said it for him. The game is over, but only this match. Mark stood, gasping, still not fully understanding what had happened. Emma's hands were bloody from metal shards. James shut off the remaining power and sank heavily into a chair. Kane still didn't let go of Roy. He saw in those eyes something more terrifying than any crime, the certainty that this paralyzed monster had won even in defeat. Because now everyone knew he could kill without rising from his bed. And he would never stop. The city was drenched in rain again. Drops ran down the precinct windows, smearing the streetlight into trembling patches. Everything seemed to return to normal. No one was falling with knives on the streets, no new victims. Roy lay in the same ward. The device destroyed, the wires torn out. Doctor said he was stable, but motionless as always. Officially no chance of improvement. But Kane knew better. He stood by the window in his office. A cigarette glowed in his hand, ash falling to the floor. Behind him, Emma, James, and Mark spoke, but their words drowned in the sound of the rain. In his mind, there was only one voice. Roy's voice. The same one that had laughed at the police in the underground bunker 10 years ago. The one that left bloody symbols on walls. The one that now spoke through eyes. This is just a break, detective. The next match is already being prepared. Kane took a deep drag. He knew their duel wasn't over. Roy was alive. His mind was working, and that was more dangerous than any weapon. Sooner or later, he would find a way to step back onto the stage. Raindrops tapped against the window like a chess clock counting down. Kane squinted and exhaled smoke. I am ready, Roy. Ready for the next game. And the city continued to sleep under the cold rain, unaware that the shadow of a paralyzed killer was still dealing the cards in the dock.